This conference will now be recorded.
uh, why we put this on as a major priority, actually, to create the syllabus, the security testing syllabus. So one of the big questions that I get quite often is, why do so many security breaches occur? Why is there so much data that's being leaked out into the open? And it just keeps getting worse and worse. The numbers just keep getting higher and higher. And just when you think that you've heard about the worst one, there'll be another one come along that's about 10 times as large. So when you boil it down, some of the things we see on this slide are some of the key reasons why these breaches continue to happen. And you'll notice here that a lot of these are actually human in nature. They're mistakes made by humans. For example, someone sending an unprotected, unencrypted file, let's say on some kind of like a USB stick to somebody, or it could be someone malicious either on the inside or outside. One of the big ones that I'm going to elaborate on here this morning or this afternoon for you, is the lack of adequate defenses and testing of those defenses that we use. Another thing too is that a lot of people don't think about this very much, but the kind of functional defects we typically find in testing in general, those can be manipulated, and those can be leveraged to actually become software security vulnerabilities. So just defective software in general can give attackers an opportunity. Plus, as an industry, I think we do have a very limited view of what it means to be testing in the context of security. We tend to see it mainly as penetration testing or bug bounties or those kind of things. And I'm going to talk about those here in just a few minutes as well. One of the things that a lot of the security experts agree on is that a lot of organizations place far too much trust in the technology. They invest huge amounts of money in firewalls and encryption and all different kind of means to protect their infrastructures. And those are not bad things, but they fail to pay attention to some of the more basic low-level things, like the person answering the phone, the human aspect. And a lot of people don't even start thinking about what security means in their projects until almost at the end of the project, where then you have to start retrofitting things in to make the system more secure. And of course, one of the ultimate examples of that is with some of the browsers, and and in fact, just about any kind of commercial software you use, there's always a bunch of patches that happen on a very frequent basis to mainly take care of security issues. You see that on your mobile devices, both Android and iOS. They're always people are always discovering security vulnerabilities in those, and the updates are supposedly helpful in fixing some of those. And the final thing I have on this list is one that, is nothing that we can actually fix, but it's something that we can be aware of, and that is that there's this lack of awareness at the executive level. It's not that they don't understand that cybersecurity is a problem, it's an issue, but a lot of people at that level think that they've got it handled, once again, because of the technology that they're using, and they're being told by people that it's all under control. And then when they find out that it's actually not under control, then that's where the problem occurs. And there's been a lot of discussion around over the past couple of years, at least. There's a fairly new C-suite designation of the Corporate Information Security Officer, the CISO. But even more so, a lot of boards of directors now are considering having a security person on the board of directors that's not the CISO, that is someone who can even be independent of that person. Okay, so that's just kind of the high level big picture there. Now, this is a slide from Capers-Jones. I have his permission to show this slide. And, you know, I think whenever we talk about, you know, investing in people and training and knowing, you know, what are some of the things we can maybe prevent, if you look at the damage and recovery cost of security defects, it's the highest of all the ones that we have. It's higher than requirements problems, data defects, code defects. When it's all said and done, over $200 million on average is about what it costs to deal with a major security breach. Some of that has to do with fines and restitutions and lawsuits. A lot of that has to do with lawsuits, actually. So, but it's the cleanup, and also there's some intangibles like loss of reputation, loss of trust that can fold into it. So the stakes are extremely high, and these are actual numbers that have been measured internationally. So they're expressed in US dollars, but they're actual international numbers. So the cost can be quite staggering. Now, here's the thing, though, that I'm kind of going to net it out here to the next 3 or 4 slides, is that actually most organizations don't really know the true status and the strength of their information security defenses because they've never actually tested them. No one in their organization has tested them. All they know is that we've spent money on it and that we have some things in place that people tell us are in place. And also combine this with most organizations also have a very limited approach to security testing, which is largely penetration testing. Penetration testing is fine, it's needed, but it's just a snapshot of the situation at any given point, and many times is totally from the external. I'm going to give you an analogy of that in just a minute. Also, there's an opportunity here because many of the security vulnerabilities could be identified and eliminated if we did have a wider, more robust view of security testing. And one of the things as we set out to write this syllabus, I really wanted to have it be a holistic kind of view of security testing, not just focusing on tools, not just focusing on process, but the whole picture, people, process, tools, everything working together to secure the information in an organization. Now, one thing also we know here is that security testing is a specialized activity. As a tester, if you already have good testing knowledge, then it's not hard to obtain this knowledge. It's just basically learning new ways to test, new things to test, but also new ways of thinking about what to test. And so it is an extension of what you may have experienced in just testing functionality in software. But for sure, specialized training is needed. Sometimes you'll find companies that they want to take their security admin team and turn them into security testers. That can sometimes work if those people get trained in testing. One of the common things that we see quite often in any form of testing, when you try to take someone from a role, let's say a BA role or something, and put them into testing, is they can do the happy path just fine. But when it comes to actually trying to break the system or break into the system, as our case may be, then that's where the thought processes need to be considered there. Now, I just want to run down to through this for just a second. This is the way it typically plays out. You know, you ask the questions, well, do we have a firewall installed? Yes, we do. Have intrusion detection systems been installed? Yes, they have. Have we applied encryption? Yes, we have. Are the internal controls in place? Let's say yes. Are security policies and procedures defined? Yes. Is physical security in place? Do we actually know who's going in and out of the building, for example? Yes. And do we have authentication and authorization applied? Yes to that one as well. But then when we ask the question, well, were these correctly applied and are they working effectively? That's where we have the big question marks. That's where people can't really say definitively, yes, they are, or no, they're not, for the simple reason, once again, that no one has ever gone in and tried to test those. They haven't really, it's more than an audit, by the way. It's a test to make sure that they're not only in place, but they're correctly in place and that they're actually effective in what they're supposed to be doing. Now, as I talk about this with people, especially executives in companies and folks like that, I use this analogy of home security. And if you think about how your home is, how would you feel, and would you feel safe if you only checked the doors, and if you only checked to see if they were locked maybe once a month? I know I check mine every night at least, and sometimes even during the day. What if you had an alarm system, but you had never actually heard it make a noise, make a sound? What if you had alarm monitoring, but you had never been called by the monitoring company when the alarm is tripped? Sometimes I accidentally trip the alarm at my house. I let the dogs out and I forget that the alarm has been set and it's early in the morning. I haven't had my cup of coffee yet. And I set off the alarm, and hopefully in about 1 minute, I'm getting a call. Now, there have been times where it took several minutes to get a call, and that greatly disturbed me when it took that long. What if you had no personal protection plan? And by that, I mean, what would you do if someone did actually get into your home, even if the doors were locked, even if the alarm was set? Do you have a way to deal with that? Do you have a place you could go? Do you have a bat by the side of your bed or something? So what would happen? How would you protect yourself personally in your home? But this is how a lot of people think about security testing. They think, yes, I've got locks on my doors. I've got all this stuff here. I've got lights. I've got all this. But they may have never really tried them or actually sometimes used them. Now, the typical IT security view of security testing, and this was kind of stunning to me because as we were writing the syllabus, I went to a lot of information security conferences, and I talked to a lot of people. And there are basically two forms of testing that I heard about quite often in these conferences. Actually, I take that back. I didn't hear about them quite often, but when testing was mentioned, on the 2 or 3 times it was mentioned, these were the ones that were mentioned most often. Penetration testing, primarily, and sometimes bug bounties, and also sometimes incident response testing. Now, I've already mentioned about the penetration testing, that it is a snapshot, and it's good to know how someone can break into your system. And I have a friend, Roger, who he used to be a burglar. He's gone straight now, and he's a good guy. But he came over to my house to fix some plumbing one time, and he told me about he saw several places where someone could break in, and that was very helpful. That was good to know, and I fixed those places. But Roger can't be there all the time. And there could be other things that would happen that would maybe give a burglar a way to get into my house. The bug bounties, yeah, they are good to find the security bugs, but the only problem is by the time they've been found and discovered, they're out in the wild. And when they're announced, then it puts everyone into a scramble to fix the bugs that were actually identified. And so it's kind of like, yeah, we've got the security defects and now they're out there. Now let's see who can find them. It's really kind of a, I don't know, it's a way to get by with some form of testing without actually having testing inside. And it happens far too late, in my opinion. And then incident response testing. Now this is a good one to have because, yeah, if you do have an incident response plan, you need to know, does it work? Do people know what to do in the event of a security breach? There are laws that have to be followed. There are things that have to be done. So yes, that needs to be tested. And one of the big things is we get into this in the course. What's the, like, one thing I ask people just in conversations about this, what's the very first thing you do when you have some kind of security incident? And you get all kinds of answers. You know, shut the system down, or you know, make sure you call the police or something. And the answer is you preserve the evidence. You do everything you can to take snapshots and to make sure that you preserve everything that you can, just as kind of an example. But there's, in this whole scheme of things, very little mention of what you might consider functional security testing, which leaves a lot of things untested in regards to security. Now, let's talk about the ISTQB Advanced Security Tester Certification. In 2016, the ISTQB, we released the Advanced Security Testing Syllabus. There were 5 key authors of the syllabus. 2 of us were from the US and the others were from Europe. That syllabus was reviewed by over 20 ISTQB reviewers with security knowledge. Also, that knowledge spans industry and government sectors worldwide. And we made some fairly heavy use of standards as our guides on this, especially from the United States. The National Institute of Standards and Technology has done a tremendous amount of work in cybersecurity, and they have a cybersecurity framework. That's what the CSF means there. And by no means is that the only standard that we reference, but that's just kind of an example of one that we did reference. Of course, there's OWASP and some others that we mention as well. Now, here are some of the things that are covered. These are the basic chapters of the syllabus. If you have not seen that syllabus, by the way, you see the link here at the bottom of the slide. If you want to get a copy of the syllabus, all you have to do is go to the ISTQB website and go to the download section. And it's kind of a little bit confusing, but if you follow that link, you'll get there. But there's advanced syllabi, which is not under that category. It's just in the downloads area. But anyway, we spend time at the beginning talking about the basis of security testing. In other words, how do we base our security tests? What are they based in? Are they based in requirements? Are they based in knowledge of threats and vulnerabilities and those kind of things? And then we get into the security testing purposes, goals, and strategies. What are the things that a good security testing effort should entail? What should you be thinking about in terms of your overall objectives in security testing? And then we lay out a way that you can define your own security testing processes that would be in line with the life cycles that you're using in your organization. And we have a section on security testing throughout the software life cycle, because we felt very strongly as a syllabus team that just testing toward the end of a life cycle was insufficient. In fact, we believe that security testing should be designed into the system. We believe that there should be requirements for security that can be traced all the way through the project life cycle, whether you're using a traditional approach or whether you're using an agile approach. or anything, any kind of approach, it should be one that is not, security is not the afterthought there. And then a major chapter of the syllabus is testing security mechanisms. Now, we we kind of had a little bit of a challenge with the naming of this because we wanted to call it security defenses, but that caused kind of a problem with some other terminology that was already established. So the idea of a mechanism is something like encryption or authentication or those kinds of things, that any means to protect, intrusion detection, anti-malware protections, any of that. So it's the way to understand what's in place, and then how do you actually test that? Now, I want to hasten once again to re-emphasize that our approach to security testing is not just based on the perimeter view of security. If you're familiar with the perimeter model of security, basically it says, I build this perimeter, which could be like a firewall or something, and my main goal is just to keep people out, okay? That is not the philosophy that we take in this course and in this syllabus. We talk about the malicious insider. We talk about, how do you write secure code? So any perception that this is just simply perimeter-driven security is totally inaccurate. You'll get a full featured view of what security testing should be. As evidenced in this next chapter, the human factors in security testing, we talk about social engineering and how people in the company need to be aware of what they do that can impact security. And then how do you evaluate and report on your security test? And we give some treatment to the security testing tools. We don't talk about how to use them necessarily, but we do introduce you to the types of tools that are out there for security testing. And then finally, we give you ways to keep up with standards and industry trends. One of the great challenges in this whole space is we've had new threats emerge since 2016, one in particular being ransomware. Those kind of things pop up and they become major trends and major threats. And so we give you some ways, we give you some places that you can stay plugged into that to learn about these. And we only update the syllabus every so often. So the things like ransomware that I just mentioned, they're not going to be on the exam, but at least you need to be aware of them if this is the direction you're going to become a security tester. So our goals in the syllabus overall, we once again want to have this life cycle view of security and testing, that you build security and not patch it in. And we want it to be more than penetration testing. Once again, we're not knocking pen testing because it is very important, but it does have its limitations because of being kind of a snapshot in nature. Plus, you're trusting someone that you may not know with the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. And so that's another thing to think about there. Also, we wanted to be able to give access to anyone in the organization that has authorization to do security testing, that everyone actually has a role in security testing, but it does take training and it does take the right authorization to do that. One of the key themes is you don't want to just go out and start doing security testing, because then you may look like the malicious insider. And we want to give people, especially testers, this specialized career path. Cybersecurity is going to be doing nothing but growing in the future, because it's a war that has no end. As one person says, it's like Y2K without the deadline. There are always going to be new attacks. There's always going to be new needs. And so I believe that as awareness of the problem grows, people are going to realize, yeah, we need to make sure that what we have in place actually works. And we hope that this can be a part of the solution to the enormous cybersecurity challenge that is out there. That was a goal of ISTQB and all of us on the syllabus team. So here is the further instruction on where to find the syllabus, and I would encourage you to go and download it and take a look at it. I think you'll see that it's a fairly large coverage of the syllabus, and the training course that I wrote on this is one of the very few available out there, and I designed my course to be 4 days in length. The syllabus is a 3-day course, but it's a very full 3 days, and I felt like to really get the information and to do the exercises and all that really it takes 4 days to cover this. And it'll be a very complete coverage, and we'll have exercises. We have plenty of exercises in the course, and everyone that's been through it has come out on the other end saying, wow, I had no idea there was so much to security testing. So at this point, I'll be happy to take any questions. I have about maybe 10 minutes or so here before I have to get prepared to teach my class that I'm teaching after this webinar. But I would be happy to take any questions that that any of you might have.
So I don't know, can you hear me, Randy? Can everybody else hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. So it's always difficult, I think, for a bunch of guys at the end of a line to ask the first question. So positive differences, Randy, that security testing has made, and what's it given, do you think, the world as a whole? Because we know we'll never beat it all, but I think too many places just ignore it, and really they're fools to do so. So the primary benefit, I think, for you is what, Randy?
Well, to me, I think in many ways it's a business proposition from one thing, the trust standpoint. I think it would be a really positive thing for a company to be able to tell its customers that their defenses have been independently tested or even internally tested, however you may want to achieve that. There's also the compliance issue now that we've seen, like in Europe with the GDPR and those kind of regulations now in effect, and I believe they'll be expanded around the world. And so it's going to be a proactive thing to say that not just that I've ticked off this box, that we treat people's information seriously, and we don't email them needlessly. There's a lot more to it than that. But to be able to meet that, and the final one that I would just mention off the top of my head was that from the legal and audit standpoint, you're demonstrating that you're doing due diligence to handle these things, because if you have a major data breach, your company probably will wind up in court over it. And the question will be, who knew what when? And what did you do? Did you take reasonable care with the items that you were entrusted with? So a lot of the benefit here is very protective. It's almost like the same idea of having your safety mechanisms in place. And so I think right now too many companies are kind of just holding their breath and crossing their fingers that nothing is going to happen and that they won't be a target of someone. But to me, it's those kind of benefits that are helpful.
That's great, and clearly you make the point that a lot of companies are putting a security person on their board. And that in turn means that there is a decent career path available for the security tester who takes the trouble to get trained and can actually make a real name for themselves. They can move up the organization very quickly. Now, no one else has asked any questions. Is there? I haven't seen one.
Let's see. I'll
Right.
check the SSQ here.
Have you seen the chat there, Randy, that's come in?
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions, and
Okay.
Bernard, one of these might be one that you can answer. Oh, okay. One is that assume there is exam after this course and assume it is recognized worldwide.
Yeah.
Bernard, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. The exam is on the last day of the course. It is an international certificate that's recognised worldwide. So your visa perhaps to travel to other countries if that's what you want to do.
Right. It is based on the ISTQB syllabus, and so therefore it is recognized worldwide. Another question, would you say this course could be applied to testing the security of embedded devices? Yeah, Jonathan, it could. We cover more than embedded, obviously, but we do mention testing embedded devices. It's not a focus of the course, but a lot of the things here that we talk about, embedded devices are components of other larger systems, and there are some things in there. I think for you to make that determination for yourself, the best thing to do would be to get a copy of the syllabus and to just do a search on that within the syllabus there. Another good question here from Pamela. You mentioned an element covering the writing of secure code. Is it necessary for course attendees to have a background of code development? No, absolutely not. You do not have to have a coding background. The context of the secure code is that when we talk about life cycle views of security implementation, secure code is one of the essential ones. So let's put it this way. Let's say that you don't have a coding background, you're in the security testing role, and you are in a code review. This would give you the knowledge of the questions to ask. Have you included edits to prevent SQL injection attacks, such like that? So no, you do not have to have the code background. Just like we talk about networking, you don't have to have a network administrator background, but it's impossible to talk about security testing without understanding what goes on in networking as well. So that would be one as well. Another question here from I think is Pavan. Hi, does security testing is applicable for every application or service that is built, or is it more dependent on type of business? Also depends on the specific set of users that will use the service or application. Great question. Well, let me put it this way. There was a recent hack that just came out about how if you have a remote key fob for your car to open it, and that your car is based on that key to start it, on that key fob, without actually putting the car in. There's now a way to hack that, and that you can actually steal a car by hacking the keyless remote entry of a car. And once again, it's the kind of key fob that will also let you start the car. So it can extend down to the smallest component of things that are being built. So I would say, yes, it probably is applicable to just about every application or service that is being built, because those can become avenues of attack. They can become attack vectors, as we call them. And it does depend on the specific set of users that will use the service. But you know what? You cannot really totally anticipate who all your users are going to be. So one of your class of users you've got to consider is the malicious user. And so that would be something as well to consider. Lee asked a question. Would this course be beneficial for test managers, or is this aimed at the tester? Is there benefit for test managers? Could you explain what those benefits are, please? That's a great question, because we do get into the details of security testing. It's not just all, it's not at a high level process view of things. I guess it really depends on, as a test manager, how deeply you get into the process and how much you would want to know about the security testing. If part of your role as a test manager is to oversee the work of security testing, then yeah, you would probably find this course very helpful. There may be some areas where you might say, yeah, that's more on the implementation side, but just to know what's involved as part of something that you would have to manage, yeah, there might be some good knowledge in there for you. But I will say, that at certain times you may feel like you're in some pretty deep water. But and especially when you take the course, when you take the exam is not easy. I'll just say it. So it's hard to take the exam without having a course behind you and preparing you for that. Another question, is there any prerequisites to attend the course? You do have to hold the foundation, ISTQB foundation level certificate, and you need at least 3 or more years experience in software testing or related field. Security experience is also helpful, but it's not required. So we don't, require that you have security testing experience. In fact, one of the goals is that we can kind of open this up as another career path to you. But you do need to have that foundation level certificate and 3 years of software testing experience behind you.
I'll just put a little adjunct on that, Randy, if I may.
Sure.
Anybody can actually take the course. To take the exam, you require a foundation certificate.
Yes, great clarification there, Bernard.
If you felt that you wanted to take the course but weren't interested in the certification, it is equally relevant for you to do so. But to say you're an ISTQB advanced security tester, you would have to have the foundation certificate first and then pass the exam for this particular course.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Bernard. I forgot to mention that little distinction.
That's okay. Look,
it's important.
It is, but look, I'd like to thank you, Randy, for coming. I'm going to pinch the screen back. Thanks for everyone for their questions too. Come on, share. So really, thanks to you, Randy, for your experience, your insightful views, and everybody. Randy's coming along to London on November the 12th to the 15th to present this course. If you want to come along, then get in touch. This webinar I'll post on our website and on YouTube. And thanks for attending. I hope you found it useful, guys, and we hope to see you soon. So I'm going to close the meeting now. Thank you very much to everybody, and especially to you, Randy.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Yeah. So.